Okay, welcome to FNA. So we have one big piece to finish up, which is the communication plan. Wait, we're losing Michelle. Okay. Is to finish up the communication plan. And then the second is to begin to draft ideas, begin to brainstorm ideas on what an MOU would look like for the Narberth Business Association. With the idea that once the communication plan is being implemented, that will free up $12,000 that went to an information officer in the past. Those funds could be reallocated to support the NBA. Right? Okay. So let's start with the communication plan. Okay. So the matrix that Michelle presented does a fabulous job of pointing out what are types of information and what are type of outlets that information could be disseminated. What of course would have been helpful for us to do at the beginning if I had presented it would be steps involved in creating the communication plan, because the first one really is what is the goal of the communication plan, who are the key audiences. We've identified the key messages and we've created a tactical outreach plan. I think it's important for us to kind of backtrack and really think about who are the stakeholders, why do we want to share information. Michelle, we're talking just about the communication plan and how if I had been better at this, I would have given everybody this first. So now we have done number 4, which is this idea of creating kind of a tactical outreach plan. Loosely, that's represented in the matrix. But I really think that we should talk about what is the goal of the communication plan. We talked about that loosely, but I think that we should also identify key audiences. Thus far, we have identified the office. I think that council needs to be in that as well, and how we all communicate. And I have some ideas and thoughts about that. One of the goals that we identified that is not, and understandably not represented in the matrix, is the idea of, Rob, I believe this was your suggestion too, is this idea of how do we, customer service and care of the stakeholders. And that's what really made me to think of what is the goal of the communication plan, because that's where I think the customer service is one piece of that.
Yeah, I mean, this is a helpful starting point, but we want to maybe have benchmarks on what good service looks like.
Right.
This is more about the outlet, different forms of communication.
Yeah, it's kind of that number 4 tactical outreach. Okay, can we brainstorm goals of communication plan? Or Michelle, do you have any comments before we move to identifying goals? No. Sean? No. Okay, well, I can't just, what do you think? Customer service, let's put that into a more clearly defined sentence, statement.
So, I mean, one area would be when people make phone calls into the general office.
Oh yeah, I mean that's
Right.
that's a, sort of a quantifiable in terms of what happens. Does it get? I don't know what the current practice is. I haven't called the borough office in a really long time. I usually stop in if I need to reach them. I might occasionally call, but usually, I don't know what current practice is, but it seems like it would be reasonable to have a quantifiable goal about how frequently, it's the phone is monitored by a live human versus voicemail, or talk about whether that is the way the world operates now. What is the expectation? Or if there's a way to at least exit out of the voicemail system relatively. Might make more sense for a voicemail system to initially triage people, but I mean, is there an expectation that people should be able to exit out of that and speak with somebody live in the office, like basically all the time? Is that an expectation that we set for customer service? I don't know. Is that the kind of question you're getting at?
Yeah. I mean, but I guess I know things have been changing, so if people have questions about trash, they go directly to the trash.
So I was going even higher up.
Yeah, that makes more sense to triage the initial contact with.
So I was going even higher up to saying,
Okay, higher.
like, a goal is for citizens and stakeholders to feel welcomed and heard by borough staff and elected officials.
But how do you measure that?
Well, then I would say, how do you measure that? So that's where I would put in, that would really come us down to
All right.
how do you evaluate whether or
All
not,
right.
how do you identify? And I think a lot of that is in,
This is good.
This
the
is
yin
the-
yang thing again. High level goals first.
high-level goals first. I think part of the communication when I think of this is like Narberth is more than a bureaucracy. That we are a small town and there is the expectation that we're not like Philadelphia, that you're going to get a human, that you're going to be able to have a conversation with a human. I think one of the goals is council members. I'm really just talking out loud. I'm very here. Council members are approachable and accessible, and are transparent with their committee or their feelings, or I think that also council has to be a part of this.
Mm-hmm.
All right, but the high level goal was, that you just stated was, so you want to formulate goals and not get into operationalizing. Right?
Well, I think you then take the goal and then you say, how do you operationalize that? How do you measure citizens and stakeholders feel welcomed and valued? What does that look like? Narberth moves beyond bureaucracy and remains a small town of neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Council members are approachable and accessible, open with, responsive maybe. Sean, Matt, or Ed, do you want to sit up here?
I'm sorry?
Do you want to join us?
What was that?
Okay. Matt, Sean, any feedback on communication goals? I mean, you're on the front line of interacting citizens when they're calling and coming in.
Or is it Michelle? Michelle is really.
We all are. Everybody sitting in that office is in the front line. It's a hard thing for me to do, to hear this and not take it personally. I hear customer friendliness. We are all customer friendly. So it's like, I kind of get defensive. I'm like, okay, is something happening that we are going down this path that we're not customer friendly? And that we don't answer phones? Because Michelle answers the phone all day. So it's like, what's happening?
So I will say the fact that you said we're all on the front line,
Yeah.
I think is part of the problem. And actually Sean and I said this, and I said, I personally would totally support in the CIP. You now walk in that office and you don't know who to go to.
Yeah.
So really, you're the front line.
Yeah.
Because when I walk in, the eyesight is to come to you. So is it your job? Are we paying you at your salary to greet everybody that walks in that door? No.
Yeah.
So you don't look up and say, hi, welcome to Narberth. The old office setup had that desk. When a person walked in, it was clear you were there until someone got up and greeted you. I think the furniture is, again, I'm not a designer, but I think the fact that you said we're all on the front line is actually part of the problem.
Amen.
And
I mean, it's inefficient.
I said this to Sean, and I said this when you brought up the CIP, I was happy to see that you put in some furniture in that, to have a gathering center.
Mm-hmm.
There's nowhere to talk. So when I come to talk to you, I'm sitting over a cubicle.
Yep.
It sets up an authoritative, it sets up a power structure dynamic that people in the community, and me personally, sometimes feel. So I don't think it's personal, I think it's a bad office design that does not speak to.
Okay, well, that's something different.
Well, I think that's something here.
Okay.
Citizens and stakeholders feel welcomed and values. One of the goals is, I think, CIP, and understanding that when someone comes in, whoever that is, there's a clear space to engage with the identified person.
Yeah, I can get behind that.
And then to that end, I would hope that we would, as a council, appreciate that that's a financial investment and it's not about you having nice office furniture,
Yeah.
that we can tie it back to, no, we have gotten feedback that, and myself included, from citizens. I walk in and I don't know who to talk to. And I don't feel welcomed because I'm disturbing someone. Because in the reality is, they are disturbing someone.
Right. That's true.
They
You
are.
disturbing someone when you come in.
You know, where I'm assuming it's Michelle's job to be the front line as the office
Yeah.
manager.
And Michelle can't do her job without all of us hearing it and being a part of it. So even if we do this, you know, we're all still a part of it. You know?
Mhm.
It's impossible not to overhear everything. And it's a very difficult work environment.
So, okay, again, I didn't even think of these in advance other than kind of starting on some ideas. So if we were to all agree that it's important that citizens and stakeholders feel welcome and valued in council and the office, is that a goal that we can all think, we of course want?
Of course, that should be
Okay.
all the communication, I would think, from the municipal communication plan that citizens and stakeholders feel welcome and valued by the way we communicate. Heard, of course, good thing. Maybe we disagree, but maybe we disagree.
So, you know, to your point, Michelle, then I would say, you know, what's the operation on that? Then I say we invest in office space that allows relationships, efficient and effective interactions to happen with the appropriate people. You know, so if I'm coming in to talk about trash, it's not Regina because she's the first person I see and I have to interrupt her and then I feel awkward because I'm interrupting her because it's not her, you know. So that's kind of how I was thinking. Do you agree?
Yes.
So, I mean, I don't know what the, like, you would know the solution, but we looked at the KCDA and I guess we decided we couldn't afford it or we didn't want the service window model. And, but I hear what Matt's saying. I mean, it would be very hard for me to work in that office because I can't not hear what everybody thinks.
It's an interrupted workspace.
So-
So it's impossible to work
So it
on
cuts
any
into the
complicated
efficiency
project.
of your work.
I mean, Matt, I think you made the point when you said we're on the front line. That's a bad design. And
So I don't know if there would be an alternative, kind of affordable, like putting a wall in there that still allows for a welcome space, like Michelle to have her desk and a reception
I
area.
think the plans that Ed Mangold worked on with the borough a little over a year ago were a good vision that doesn't have to be the, you know, the 800 or the $1.2 million investment it would be to do it from soup to nuts, but a front porch space inside the building when you walk in. Maybe someday when you enter the office, you don't do it through the toilets. Would be a good idea. But if we make these kinds of changes too, it's going to, there's some cascading effects because we're overcrowded in that space downstairs too, particularly when the building code official / zoning officer and sometimes the borough engineer are there at the same times. And Ed's trying to get work done, Michelle's trying to get work done. And sometimes we have 7 people in that space. So figuring out effective ways to work in other parts of the building is one of the cascading effects, which I don't think have anything to do with communication. It's more of a management. How are we going to manage people, process, and workplace? And we've made infrastructure investments in this building that are going to help us to do that. Mostly I'm talking about the IT infrastructure we've invested in. I can get my calls on this, and I can be anywhere there's Wi-Fi, and it's like I'm here at the office. So we do have some freedom with how and where we work. Now, we do need better spaces for meeting. But I don't want to go too far afield. I was a little, I was going to be a little more quiet than I'm being right now because I still wanted to see how you're going to rope this idea back into communicating, because when I first took this project up and thought through how we how we get information out and who are we targeting and what forms should it take. And you asked some of the goals. I was thinking more of it as like this send and receive process that we have to improve upon. And customer service is like a way you do that, but
Okay, so
like when you said
okay.
goals, I thought the first thing that popped in mind was freshness. Like whatever we're doing, just like vegetables, you know, you gotta sell it straight out of the field. It's got to be timely and important information, and to be fresh, you have to be on it.
Right.
Like there has to be a rhythm and a cycle to it. So it's not something we do and say, oh, took care of that. Now we communicate it on to the other things. And that takes time, effort, investment of human resource to do. So maybe that's one of my goals.
So I have
is
fresh and
timeliness.
current communication, timeliness.
Timeliness. And that can be, things can come slowly, or things can be quick, daily communications, weekly, quarterly, and even annually.
Right.
But it has to always be renewing. It can't be stale.
And you know what, maybe customer service then doesn't necessarily represent what we're talking about. We're talking about the idea of everyone feeling as if they have the ability to communicate and understand who to get to, how to get to them, and it is timely and fresh.
You're talking about accessibility and inclusivity as ideas?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And, you know, just to be clear here, you know, again, my suggestion would be too is, you know, council members are approachable, accessible and responsive. You know, I think part of the responsibility comes that chairs have to put up an agenda a week before, and I think it is reasonable in 48 hours to be expected that we put up some sort of minutes. You know, I think as a council, we need to say we will respond to emails in X amount of time. You know, I would also suggest that public comment is not the only form of communication to your elected officials, that we as a council, you know, maybe twice a year we have an open house where, you know, council or citizens have something to say, but it's not really a comment for a public meeting. It's just a time to address someone that it doesn't have to happen at the Greeks, you know, when I'm having dinner with Tom. You know, that there's a set time.
It's still going to happen.
That's going to happen. But so, Matt, to your point, I think it's taking a hard look at, I guess I was taking it of like, okay, let's just reaffirm that we want to interact with citizens and that's really valuable. Okay, what can the office do? What can council do?
Okay.
That's how I was looking at it. So I apologize if I put you first before council.
Cool.
That's all that I was talking about.
Thank you.
And to your point about the office, I don't know, like I would love to see what the Penn students came in and how they redesigned Station Circle. Let's get, you know, Drexel Interior Designs if you want them to say, how would you reconfigure this office in this space? And then, you know, that's something you would do, but as a council, we would say this is important because we identified in our communication plan that citizens and stakeholders feel welcomed and understand who to go to, and therefore, you know, I can support allocating funds to that.
There's something buried in what you just said that I think might be another goal too, is legibility.
Say more.
Well, one of the things that came out of the parking study was, what the hell is your parking system?
Well, yeah.
Where do you go to figure it
The
out?
webpage. We'll talk about this.
You know, like how does somebody comprehend how parking regulation works in the borough? Well, it's very complex. One of the reasons is we have foundational problems and that impede everyone's understanding of it. We have a bizarre ordinance, and we have piecemeal legislation, and we have a strange geography, and we have at least 4 different kinds of meters downtown. It's not that big of a downtown. There's 4 different kinds of meters. So legibility, I think, I would love for, there's a big move, if you're thinking just in terms of websites, there's a big move to standardization, because what you have is you have people who work in government who kind of are going to always kind of choose the standardization card because it's the safest card to play. Sure, we'll go with blah 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 blah. And if you look, there's a pretty status quo provider of website design content, content providers. So I'm always looking at, well, is it easy and legible to find your way around? And you can go to Civic Plus, and that's the name of them, and pay for this thing, but it's not anymore. I'm always testing the ease of it. How easy is it to figure out what you want to do? How easy is it to download Uber and get a car anywhere in I downloaded Uber and had a car waiting for me at my hotel in Atlanta, and it took me less than 5 minutes.
Sure. Right.
Are you kidding me? That's legibility on steroids. Like, that's something that's really easy to use. I know we're never going to get to that point, but I'd like it to be easier for people to kind of permeate that membrane between what it is we do on a daily, weekly, quarterly basis, and what people need service-wise.
So I would add to that, John, though, and I think this is an important distinction, is to say legibility for people to understand how to be informed citizens, right? Using the fact that citizenship is a verb. And, so often we hear things like, I had no idea, the comprehensive plan. How many times do we get people saying, I had no idea? I mean, short of flying a plane back and forth over Narberth, there was truly nothing else that I think that we could have done. And the onus of responsibility, while yes, it reflects on us as elected officials and you in the office, has to also be the citizens that you have to take responsibility for seeking out information. And to that point, then, it is legible, because you can't hold people responsible if information is buried. So if you're saying, you need X amount of funds to update the web page or the Uber app version or whatever that is, then that's where I think it comes back to council to say, okay, we agreed on this goal of legibility.
And we should approach our key audiences over a spectrum of engagement. So somebody who just wants to read a text, and that's the level of syntax that they want to be able to understand in that language. Like, you're learning a foreign language, you want to know where donde está el baño, and where's the food, and there's basic stuff you want to know. And then there's the War and Peace version, and that's like the comprehensive plan. Like, you don't go up to somebody who wants to know about how the borough works and hand them the comprehensive plan, because really there's 1 in 1,000 people that are going to really like salivate at the comp plan and read it and keep it on their on their nightstand and leaf through it. But the engagement has to happen across all that in that entire spectrum. So maybe including the legibility should be I don't know what the right word is, but there needs to be. You shouldn't have to be a fanatic person about government services to understand how government services work. It should be easy to cling on to. What's the right word? Can't remember the right word.
No, it's. I don't want to say information is digestible, but you're right. There's different, there's information of give me a paragraph summary of the comp plan, then there's the entire document. Yeah,
or listen, I just want to know what a comp plan is. Tell me in 5 seconds what it is. What's a written document that gets rewritten over a certain time period that sort of charts a course for community development.
But so some of that would come back to where I would think, goal 1 and goal 2, like, okay, so citizens and stakeholders feel welcomed and valued. What does that look like from a council perspective, an office perspective?
I think that first one is an outcome. Like, if we really do this job correctly and we're communicating well and everyone is figuring out that's how people are going to feel at the end of the day about when they engage. And that's how people talk to Ed. Everyone Ed deals with comes away with a warm, fuzzy feeling about how government works. Because he has a gift for doing that.
Oh, I know. I get texts and emails all the time about it.
Me, not so much. I'm kind of thorny.
Well, I think there's one. I mean, I like what you're saying, and we're in this transition, right, to a more digital world. So I think we're just in this transition period where we have some older members who really crave the old way of face-to-face or whatever. And so it's just making sure that we have the space and the point person in the office.
I think that's a key audience point. So it has to be responsive to all spectrum of ages and people's how facile they are with technology or not. Right? The person who says, "Where's that thing that I used to hang on my fridge that told me when the trash was coming?"
Right.
Well, we all know that's
Right.
about as useful as, where that calendar is going to end up after you print it. But there's something embedded in that we need to address. And, we thought it through a little bit in our outreach plan, but that's a goal, I think, to make it universal.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a real core government principle.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't matter what gender, age, religion, sexual orientation, anything. All that does not matter. Everybody gets the same thing from us.
So
Period.
could I just take one example? So the trash schedule on the matrix is it's only shared in digital formats. It's
Correct.
So no print newsletter. So like the Cindy Ridgway calendar.
So how do we bridge that effectively?
Yeah.
I don't know
As soon as
yet.
it's printed.
Okay, right. So that's the kind of thing that we would hear from neighbors.
Yeah.
The trash schedule.
Oh, right, the basic trash schedule.
Yeah, just like that basic thing.
Which,
Hopefully we can get it so simplified that it's just like, I know it comes on Monday and they pick everything up. So I only have to remember one fact. Monday.
Right.
Except on holidays when it comes on a Saturday and I hear it coming, I run down the driveway. And I don't make it in time.
Can I make one comment back to something you said, because I think it's important, at least how I think about this. You said everybody walks away from Ed feeling warm and fuzzy, which is awkward that we're talking about him when he's sitting right there. And you said, and I'm,
He said it was all right.
and I'm prickly or whatever, how you describe yourself. I would say, right, like we're not paying everyone to be warm and fuzzy,
Yeah.
right? So.
It's just personality
Not
traits.
necessarily. No, but like at the end of the day, like we're not going to pay a borough manager to say we want you to hop up and greet everyone and hand them a cookie, right? That's not being good stewards of tax dollars. But
I'm
rather,
not opposed to have a cookie with manager day
Look.
either.
well, you know what? Maybe that's a good go for it.
Just one day.
Look, Quizzo at the, yeah, that's just good. Which is why I think back to like the office furniture and investment and infrastructure and physical space is identifying who is the forward-facing person to connect to is something that I go back to.
I mean, that's largely the office manager's role in our configuration, but there's a great deal of interaction that the assistant manager and director of public works pick up on, and a lot of people, and I don't have data to support this, and that might be part of what we look at, I don't know. Sometimes you do what you do and you let the rest go. I mean, I don't know if counting people coming in the office is something we should be spending our time doing. I don't know, it might be. But the tax collector, man, we get a lot of traffic from the tax collector in the office. And it's usually people who have some other thing they want to check on, because who hand delivers?
yeah,
I would just like to comment that is part of my role in the administration, is to assist the manager and office assistant manager with public relations, and that's what I'm here to do. And I appreciate your comment, but I also need to you to understand that face-to-face interaction, that quick reaction, appeals to the residents and makes a great combination of office and resident relationships.
And, Sean, look, to you as a manager, you hired or helped hire Ed and Chief Gallagher, which I would probably say are the the two employees that are the most forward-facing with the public because of their positions, right? Like, people
Yeah,
have issues
Michelle.
with safety or public works, right?
They're out and about, yeah.
Right. And you and John do a fabulous job of doing that, and you hired good people to do that, that's for sure. I agree. I think citizens and stakeholders feeling welcomed, valued, and informed is an outcome that everybody, elected official, borough staff, I would hope that that's something that we could agree upon. Okay. So then, is a first goal something that physical space promotes efficient communication? I'm trying to synthesize what we're saying. And then, how would we measure that? Is that we would invest in office space materials that you all saw fit that allowed relationships and efficient interaction. So if you were to come forward and say, this current setup does not speak to the goal of promoting efficient communication, then that's something that we could fiscally support and council could appropriate. Keeping us with goals so we can move us down the line. Is a goal that council members are approachable and accessible and responsible? Is that a communication goal, or is that too off topic?
I mean, certainly the agenda and minutes, that could be a goal.
Mm-hmm.
The timeline you mentioned for council. I mean, generally elected people have to be responsive, but...
Yeah, so maybe that just goes to your timeliness, fresh and current information, council agenda and minutes are updated, the communication metrics, timeline, right? So each of these, you would have to say, you have it as weekly website, this.
Mhm.
So from the office perspective, if our goal is timeliness, fresh and current information, your responsibility from the office is the matrix. Our responsibility as elected officials are agenda and minutes that are updated. Is that okay? Sean, does that make sense to you?
Yeah.
Matt, does that make sense? Okay, legibility, I think that's a really important one. I would say that I do think that we need to communicate that one of the goals is that people understand how to be informed citizens. That the onus of responsibility for us to get every single detail into every single household is one that is not.
And someone's going to say that's an outcome, not a goal. Right? And people feel is the outcome, right? That's how they feel. The goal should probably be. It's not quite a goal. I don't know what to do,
Okay.
but I mean,
Okay,
it's not.
talk to me. I'm
Well,
trying to.
people feel is how what will happen if we achieve a goal.
What I said or what Michelle
Yeah,
said?
what you said.
I said legibility, I think it needed a colon. People understand how to be informed citizens. So that's the goal. They understand that they can go to the webpage. So Matt, to your point, like you would need funds to invest in this webpage, or there's an app, to your point, that there's different types of material and its accessibility. And look, maybe my people understand how to be informed citizens is a dream, not something
It strikes me
that's...
as something that,
Okay.
again, is far from
Is an outcome.
operationalized.
Okay, I'm taking it out, okay. So that's an outcome.
But I think, Sean, you were saying a bunch of stuff about the website there,
Right.
and that was really intriguing, and you talked about standardization, and you sort of ask yourself, you sort of keep your eye on this and say, like, would it really be easier to find stuff that way? I sense you're skeptical about
Yeah.
following that model, and it
Yeah.
seems that I actually, it's probably, like, I agree, I don't think that from what I've seen of that, because, like, you interact with it commonly if you go try to research what other, municipalities are doing. It's not something I would think we would be well served to invest a lot of money in transitioning to. It doesn't add a whole lot over what we already have.
Yeah.
I think if we were going to do something, we would want to do it differently, is improving our online presence, our web presence, as our sort of fixed one, not our, I don't even know what the terminology, not our sort of, our static web presence, not our dynamic one, like through social media. Is that a goal that we should have now, or do we feel like we're okay where we are? What do you think? What does everybody else think?
Oh, do you mean make the website more visually appealing, or what do you mean?
More usable, more informative, more legible, right? Is that something that we think we need to invest in? Is that a goal?
I mean, Matt, you looked into this during economic development. You were looking at building out the business page. And I think at that time, correct me if I'm misquoting you, you said, really you came here and you were just building a web page, right? That it was kind of like a crisis and that there wasn't clear access to information. So you put it all up there and then haven't had the money, time, or resources to really do anything other than maintain the current structure.
Yes and no. It was designed in a way where it is more data rich. If you are interested in looking at, you can look up the Wayback Machine. You can look at every website since the beginning of time. It's the archive, the Internet Archive, and look at what the website was.
I remember.
Right.
Scroll.
It was the bane of my existence, right? And so the philosophy behind the website is most people today don't go through websites like they used to. And we wanted to design it in a way that's quick, effective, and clean. And then supplement that with other more visually appealing things like social media. That's the true plan, right? So the website, the philosophy of the website, it was designed so it's structured in an off-the-shelf software. It's not proprietary. All of us have access to it and can make updates to it pretty easily. It was designed as a skeleton, and when it was revealed, it's a living, breathing document that always has to be updated. The content, I am not a good content creator. I'm a good editor. I like doing that kind of stuff, right? So if you give me, you've all had experience emailing me with updates to the website. Done, right? It's done. I get it, right? If you want content added, let me know, right? It's all about.
I actually did not know that was.
Oh, sure. It's supposed to be a living, breathing document, and that I don't have the time. I don't have the time in my daily schedule to sit there and be a webmaster. I'd be like, boy, this page here needs. I don't have the luxury of doing that.
But you also have to oversee what gets put up.
Sure.
The borough as a whole is responsible for
Sure.
any
And I like the officialness of it, and that it all goes through and standardized. To Sean's point, the standardization of it, the headings on the web page stay the same. But if you want to expand things within those, yeah, that's what it's for. It's supposed to be. And it's the standing agreement, even in the office, is that if you see something that you think that should be updated or expanded, just send it to me and tell me, and let's talk about it. And yeah, that's a great idea. Here it is. That's the genesis of it. And to reiterate the point, I don't have the luxury of reviewing every single page and being, well, I'd like to expand this page today.
Yeah. But
I wish, right? But I don't.
But to your point, then if we say, okay, one of our goals is legibility, one way to do that is web page maintenance and development, then perhaps council approves funds to outsource that. Is that the best use of funds, is to have you take attention away from a parking study where we could hire a graphic designer and a webmaster or something.
So we went down that path and it failed miserably, which is
Yeah,
how we ended
I don't
up
think
where we are.
I don't think that's the problem that's been
No.
articulated.
It's
I
the-
think what I'm hearing is the structure and bones of the website are fine. It's
Yep.
getting the content up there, which Matt's perfectly competent to put up there easily and to review for no, that's no, we can't put that on a website.
I can be the
but
filter.
He needs what we need
But
is a way to get content to Matt.
And the idea is that I'm not one who likes to this is mine, get away. The spirit of it was that it is the community's website, and so I appreciate as many eyes on it as possible, right?
Okay.
Because it's what do you want it to be, and then you might think, boy, this page could, and I don't interpret that to mean send me an email, Matt, would you please update this page? No, that's not what I mean. Give me some ideas. Give me some copy. Give me some images if you want on that page.
Yeah.
We continue. Well, look, I will say, I've sent Matt every time I've
quite
done.
revelation.
If you look at my committee meetings, it has the agenda of the meetings and anything like visuals, pictures, PowerPoints. You do throw it all up there.
So, for
Well-
example, if you wanted to expand the section on Soul Smart
Yeah.
to add, information or visuals or links to where people can get more information or applications, that's something that could fit on our website. I mean, it's appropriate. We've approved that
Yeah,
initiative.
you could have a whole page, just like Matt did a page on
Maybe it's
the
there.
business.
I don't know.
The businesses. You could have a whole page on, clean energy transitions for homeowners or for
Right,
businesses.
right.
You know, switching to an electric hot water heater, or there are any number of possibilities.
Right.
But in my experience,
the content should be good. It should add something beyond what people can already click.
right, and it should be vetted by
concise and
committees
clean
and
precise and specific to the borough.
yeah.
Yeah.
I don't have any problems telling you that you need more work on the material that you've sent me. Like, you know, maybe think about this.
Good
You know, before I
editor.
just, oh yeah, sure, copy,
A
paste,
good editor is very
away. You know, a good writer. Behind every good writer is a good editor. So it's important. And you talk about the consistency and how it fits into the larger communication plan of the website. You know, how is it maintained and how is it going to link into other modes of communication?
So the tweeting, are we ready to talk about?
Tweeting.
Yeah,
Yeah, if you could do it at 3 a.m. like our president.
Mm.
No, no tweets.
Okay, because
No
I'm
comment.
so linear and task-oriented, I'm going to repeat the same thing for probably the 5th time, just to make sure I'm hearing what you're all saying. Goals. I'm hearing you say 1, physical space promotes efficient communication. How we do that is invest in office materials that allow relationships to be efficient in interaction, right? So that is really the discretion of the office to bring to council and say this is investments that we feel as if we meet that goal. Correct? Okay. 2, timeliness, fresh and current information. How do we do that? A, council members have agenda and minutes updated and we provide any pertinent material for the webpage. The matrix timelines are consistent and deliverable because you have this. You all have a copy of the matrix, right? So it is highlighted. You know, this is a weekly, this is a monthly. Okay. Is this? Am I hearing?
Yeah.
Am I reflecting there? Okay. 3, legibility. A, web page maintenance and developments, and there's kind of the category. Committees, the NBA, commissions are providing updated and pertinent information. Right? So Matt, this doesn't put it on you, but it says,
Well, I will be involved.
well, no,
certainly.
you're posting it, but I mean, not the content doesn't
And I
fall
don't,
in
and I
it.
don't mean that to also, you know, give license to anybody and anybody saying, everybody and anyone saying, hey, I want this on the webpage.
Right. No, it has to come through the
It can't just,
committees.
oh, yes, here it is.
Yeah.
It has to be vetted.
Commissions,
Right.
boards,
Yeah.
and vetted.
Yeah.
I
Okay,
think
so,
that it would be sensible to get the word out to commissions and boards that
sure.
that they
Absolutely.
you know,
Sure.
that this is a possibility and they may be able to
okay, information for consideration.
Sure.
improve.
The second to that with legibility is that, again, this is something to discuss, is council hold quarterly meet and greets. Because when you think about legibility, I do really
Did you
think,
say quarterly?
I said quarterly.
I thought you said biannual before.
I'm sorry, I think I spelled quarterly wrong and I put biannual meet and greets.
Exactly.
Yes, sorry, my bad. Council holds biannual meet and greets, because to the comp plan idea, you know, I do think, unless you have a specific question or a comment, I'm not sure that council meetings aren't intimidating to folks. I think it would actually save us all time
Yeah.
and neighbors time if we could have an informal.
Yeah, and the agendas are very busy, so there's not a lot of time. So, yeah.
Right.
One other idea, the email list.
Mhm.
Is there a way to expand that so to get more of our neighbors on that list? I don't know what that would involve.
I think a plane with one of those signs.
Yeah, I
Dirigible.
mean,
Borough dirigible. Remote control.
Okay.
Just, because, you know, they're always droning.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
How's that?
But I mean,
I
you know,
don't know.
Civic has a welcome packet for new neighbors, right?
Mm.
So if they're, maybe you already do that. Do you have people sign up for the newsletter?
It's in the packet.
Okay.
And
in
I
our
will-
brochure.
And I will say the NBA is partnering with both the Civic and the office to do a welcome packet. And in that, Beth Warren just asked, okay, we're going to give people the information on how to sign up for the email, how to do the notify. She asked, is there anything else from the office's perspective that you want people to know? I mean, it's also in the kiosk. I just walked by, but the post office, there's a sign that prompts folks to sign up.
Yeah. I don't think the challenge is to think of things we want to connect people to. I think the challenge is to think of a digestible amount of information to communicate to someone effectively to get them hooked.
I would also go back to that people also have to take responsibility for getting information.
Yeah. Oh, and if it's, like I was saying too earlier, there's a continuum of engagement. Everyone who lives in the borough is engaged in the borough in some manner, form, or way. As soon as you put your trash can out, that's civic engagement. You're doing something.
Yeah. Okay, so the outcomes that I hear you saying is citizens and stakeholders feel welcomed, valued, and informed. People understand how to be informed citizens. I mean, I have Narberth as more than a bureaucracy and remains a small town of neighbors.
It's like facets of satisfaction. What are the different ways people feel satisfied?
What? Come on, there's an empty speech bubble. What are you thinking?
It was just funny.
Huh?
Struck me funny.
Well, I mean, those are things we're working towards, right? I mean, we can't necessarily achieve
Right, okay, I'll take that last part off.
um,
All right,
full understanding.
okay.
Of,
I
know.
that's like the warm
But
fuzzy
it's
unicorn.
like, and the
I
teachers,
know.
we always say that
Yeah.
those are our goals, to understand whether all our students get there or not.
I know. Okay.
You know,
The weekly newsletters beginning to approach the level that the mayor's weekly used to, no, not even close, but what winds up happening if you just keep appending, and people's like, oh, we can get the word out through this, and so it becomes.
And then nobody reads it.
Right, nobody reads
Right.
it because it's a little unwieldy, and I wonder, do we have the resources to, I'm not sure what product we're using for this, if anything, I don't know, if there's a reason.
MailChimp.
We're using MailChimp. I mean, there are ways, I don't know if we have the resources to, I don't want to say this, to do any sort of, any sort of MailChimp training, because I think that there are ways to format things that are a little bit more manageable, and maybe not having time to sort of delve into it on your own. Sometimes you can really make progress quickly. If someone says, oh, takes a look at the work product and says, here's a great way to keep that visual but shrink it, or put it to the side, or this is I just think it might be more helpful, because I notice that it's getting very big
Yeah.
as time passes. Is that something that we can support? I mean, is that helpful? Am I getting too in the weeds? That's not really a goal. It goes to legibility, to whether we can make some targeted investments in some technology or training that would help.
Yeah, I'm thinking of
Assist in that.
the training angle to like some it's composing an email. It's fluency in HTML. It's fluency in MailChimp and how it works. And maybe that's simple to achieve. And maybe that's just a challenge you give an employee as part of their feedback, and say like, hey, you're doing really great in this arena.
Mm-hmm.
See if you can make this kind of see if you can grow in this dimension over the next 6 months. It's kind of where my mind went when you said that.
Yeah, and that makes sense. And hopefully we have the capacity to say, if you find it a course, or an online course or something that makes this a faster process, that hopefully there's an openness to say, people can see if that's something we did in our budget. Because sometimes you can spend a lot of time banging your head against the wall if you don't have a background to self-teach it. But anyway, that's all. I'm getting too down in the weeds.
Yeah, and
Sorry.
you don't want the person to spend too much time grinding on a weekly email too. It has to be done in.
Right.
Got to get it done in
Shouldn't be
15 minutes.
time
It
consuming.
goes out the door.
Yep.
And yeah, I think I know what you're saying.
Okay, so I know that you love arrows and flowcharts, Michelle. So we've established goals for the communication plan. We've identified, Carol, office manager, has identified key messages, and you can find those on the y-axis of the grid. And I'm not going to read these all, but I will post the matrix on the webpage, if that's okay.
Yeah, email it to me. That's the best way for me.
So it's everything from partner and special
So I
events
remember.
throughout, how to and did you know exclamations. And really, Michelle did a really comprehensive job of identifying what information should come from this office and then how often that should be done. So I think that she identified those key messages really well. She also created a tactical outreach plan by, is this something that happens weekly, monthly on the webpage? Developing materials, we are doing, the office does, but within the goals that we have identified, we are actually really charging council members to submit material. So that developing the material is, yes, the stuff that you're already doing in the office, but I would suggest it's adding kind of an onus of responsibility for council members to add information, as well as inviting committees, the NBA commissions, to provide information for consideration to be posted on the webpage.
Yeah, well, the NBA has its own webpage. But in any case,
They do, okay.
but it could
Yeah, but
definitely, boards and
Shade
commissions.
Tree would be very happy
Boards
to
and
do that,
commissions,
other
yeah,
commissions, yeah.
Okay, really then I think the next question, which I'm going to skip 6 for developing a timeline, to say that I would suggest that a post-study or communicating your results are really our outcomes. And, I don't think that we need to invest time in doing pre-posts and measuring, how citizens and stakeholders feel now.
No.
Do you understand how to be an informed? But I think anecdotally, we have this idea of this is the final outcome. How do we all feel about that? So to 6, this ties into the next agenda item, which is that MOU.
I have one unpopular thing to say
Yeah.
before we get to the MOU. Are you concluding this now?
No, because I
Okay.
think we need to know from Sean, really, what is the timeline to dissolve the information officer role and transfer this responsibility to Michelle?
No, this is already happening.
Okay, so then we
Yeah.
need to just dissolve the
Yeah,
information.
we just, we haven't, there's 12 rows and 6 columns, there's 72 events that are happening. And I know some of them are aggregated into different things, but we want to keep ironing out this outreach plan with any updates that you all had. And we're already putting some of this stuff into play.
Okay, so here's my question. When there's a borough improvement, right, when Pico's coming in and doing road work, that still goes through Narberth online. That's not, so I get that post from Ed Ridgeway on social media. I don't get that from the official Narberth Facebook page.
Or it's being, it may be getting posted and you're not seeing it. If you're talking about Facebook, Facebook's algorithms do not necessarily present you with everything. That's, we don't control over what pops up in your feed. I know that Michelle may be posting this on Facebook and you're just not seeing
Yeah,
it.
we
because she's
haven't,
posting it, so.
we haven't fully spread our wings here with our Facebook page.
Okay, but so if we dissolve the information officer role, then that will probably be feedback that, okay, I depended on social media to understand when a bird was going to be closed, and now that's not happening anymore.
Yeah, right, like all the pipe work, the
Right.
bridge construction.
Yeah, I think there's nothing wrong with redundancy in using social media because it does help some people get information more quickly and then they spread it to other people. That can be helpful, but I don't want to depend on it entirely for a lot of reasons. Not everybody uses it, and in fact, you really have no control over what Facebook's algorithm is going to show you. You can post it, it could just get buried, so there's that. Okay. I mean, but do we have a spot on the website that gets updated with streets that are being blocked and street closures? I don't even know. I should know that.
Well, it should be an announcement on the website, which then gets pre-populated to Twitter and Facebook.
We have a Twitter
That's-
account?
That's how it should be, right? That's how social media is supposed to connect to
Right.
a website.
Right.
Website can't do that. There are ways to do that.
Oh, yeah.
Hasn't been done.
Okay.
It's been, has been doing his thing.
Right. It would be.
That's the next step that needs to happen.
Okay.
So we only have to post it once.
That's a great-
Pick,
right,
click,
I think
and then it goes whoop.
Everywhere. Right. So this is just to say, we want to be mindful of that as we suggest dissolving the information officer role and considering that MOU for the MBA. That's all, right? So that you all figure that out. Okay. Is this then, do we have enough substance that Sean and I can present, can come together and prepare something for the next meeting to present for council? Or present this to the next council for discussion?
Yeah, what was the something you had in mind? Just everything we've talked about at this
Yes.
meeting?
Look, you know me. It would be
Okay.
a visual with an arrow if,
Sure.
you know.
One more thing to add.
Yeah.
Because I do think, and I'll just say it, get mad at me, but I think it's a reasonable expectation when we're putting together this plan that we would do an initial, do some measurement of response rates and see where we are. How many emails do come in? What's the response rate? How many phone calls do we get? How many are answered live? I mean, I think we can't really know how well we're doing unless we I mean, that's something you want to do it for all eternity. It can be time consuming, but unless we task, I guess, Michelle really with doing some measurements so we know. Because it's I don't really know. So if an email comes in from a constituent asking a question that she can answer, how quickly does a response go back? How many of those emails come in? How much time is she spending on that kind of thing, on this communication, like with constituents and the community members? If it's a question that requires a more specialized response, what's the time frame for that to come back? And does the requester get a sort of an immediate, like, this question is going to require, these steps to be taken to get the information, so hang tight and get back to you. Because I think that's a reasonable thing to expect, that there'd be pretty quick response and they'd be consistent. Things won't sort of be like, well, I don't have an answer right now, I don't know, because then, things get pushed off. The next thing you know, a week has gone by. And it creates a bit of ire, that I not infrequently
So
hear about from people.
While I did just say, we don't want to invest in doing a pre or post, we could just go anecdotally.
Only on this.
Well, to that point though, Matt, can we do click rates on the webpage? Can you check those analytics?
Already am.
So it would be interesting to say, not only, okay, what are the phone calls, what are the response, but if we right now took a snapshot of what are click rates on the webpage, we roll out this communication plan, which I think also needs to go with some messaging that we could ask the Civic Association and the MBA to help promote that on, and then look at click rates in, 1 month, 2 months, 3 months to see if we're having any impact. I think that's something that
Well, we
probably
could
easily do.
also, I don't know if we have a number of emails that the weekly email goes to.
Oh, yeah.
But that would be neat to see that number grow, and it could be like a
Or
campaign.
list, yeah.
Subscribers, right.
Subscribers, I'm sure Matt knows that too. How big the list is.
Yeah, it'll give you, every time you log in, it'll show you how many you've gained, how many you've lost, how many people have opened it, how many people have deleted it, all of that.
Can we do a snapshot of those 3 things?
Sure.
Okay. Did I say snapshot?
I know, I said it's MailChimp, so yeah,
Oh.
of course you know.
Okay. Sean, anything to add here?
No, not this time.
Okay, so the MOU, and I emailed, but we didn't discuss this. So now that we have hopefully a communication plan that council and the office will feel good about in the
We
next
don't want to
month.
include that in the communication plan, or we do want to talk about it?
Well, I
Or
think it's a bridge. So then this plan, if agreed upon and implemented, right, we would have no reason to have a contracted information officer, because we now have Michelle, who can execute
Right.
this plan, and we have all agreed to it. Okay. So then that, I feel like, becomes kind of the impetus of, okay, we no longer have this information officer role, look, insert Ed Ridgway, and we transfer over to, is it appropriate for council to recognize our downtown as a public good? I certainly would suggest that the CIP reinforces the idea that our community cares about a thriving downtown. We did not move forward with that Main Street kind of creating a nonprofit. I believe that we all kind of agreed we have that. You really don't, we have that loosely. I called Ambler Borough, which is kind of analogous in the events and their businesses. They had the Main Street, they kind of have the Main Street now, but their borough actually gives $25,000 annually to their Main Street Business Association. They do it because they hire someone part-time to manage that work. I'm not suggesting you do that. I just wanted a sense of how much do boroughs give to their downtown? You know, I just was curious what that figure was. I think that we can probably highlight an MOU that does things like highlighting how we give in kind, right? Donations like police and
For
public
events.
works for events. But then also more clearly coming up with, and Matt hop in here, services, events, or goods that then the borough fiscally supports. And I don't know if that's saying, as a council, we allot that $12,000 to the NBA because for these things, or it was actually in discussion with Matt that you had said, actually, it's easier to do it. These are the things that we will reimburse you for. And then the NBA comes forward. Am I misrepresenting that?
Reimbursement agreements are easier to manage than just handing over X amount of dollars if you don't have an organization already in place. I believe Ambler still has an organization in place.
They do,
So
the part-time.
giving the 25,000 is not the whole story in that they contribute 25,000, but the business community also contributes a significant
A
amount.
membership, right.
And so it's a shared responsibility.
Right.
It's not just the borough saying, here's 25 grand, have
Right.
a great day, thanks for being business. No, it's, we will give you 25 grand if you as a business also pony up X amount of dollars. And
Right.
Well, it could be structured that way. I think we already have something similar where the business is already
Yep.
paying into the NBA, and then the borough has been contracting with Ed Ridgeway. But so the effect could be pretty similar.
Right, which is why I think the Main Street wasn't as attractive because our businesses already do pay it into the NBA
Yeah.
as well. But this is then just defining what the borough would support. And again, if it's easier to do it, this is what's reimbursable, then we do that. What I thought was if we could brainstorm this here, we could ask John Walco to do a little research, loosely draft an MOU that then we could bring back to the table, you know, that we can review and then introduce to the table. So in the 26 minutes, can we, if you all agree, can we start to try to identify what are those reimbursable events, materials?
Did you get what I sent
I did.
a while ago?
So,
Because that was what economic development worked on last year.
Can-
And we got to a list of tasks, you know.
Can you just publicly kind of go through that list? And the reason with the list though is I think we can't think of this as a person, we have to think this as
Right.
more globally.
Let me see if I can find it. Okay, so this was from last year's economic development committee meetings with Ed, you know, discussion back and forth. There were 3 roles. One was the information officer. That was one of 3 roles. So that role
Okay,
will
so
now
that's
move
gone.
over
Yep.
to Michelle. So the other 2 roles are basically downtown manager, business downtown manager. Acts as a liaison to business community, gets feedback, buy-in regarding borough initiatives, meets business community as a group and individually at their locations. There's a list of items like this.
Right, but those fall under the NBA. Yeah, so like the NBA president gets paid to do those roles. So I guess.
Well, so some of it's kind of bound together. Communicates borough rules, dates and deadlines, parking education efforts, trash pickup, event-related announcements, liaison between commercial property owners and prospective business tenants. That was like a retail recruiter idea. Organize annual meeting between borough and businesses. All of that was under kind of downtown manager. But then the third role was events coordinator. And that's more tricky even.
So I guess I was thinking more, like, it's not events coordinator, but Matt, stop me if I'm wrong, like, we will reimburse money because we will identify the Oktoberfest and the Dickens Festival. So we will reimburse you for, or whatever, I'm just,
Or we budget a certain amount of money that's available for reimbursement for these kinds of events, but you need to come before and say, here's the budget, here's the event we want to do, here's why we think it'll be a winner, and we're going to seek reimbursement, so you get pre-approval probably to draw from that. That would seem to me to make more sense than saying, we will only reimburse for Dickens and Oktoberfest, because that may or may not continue to be the best
right, or what, okay.
thing for them to do. So I mean, I would probably want to keep it a little more open, but say you have to come with a plan and a budget.
Okay.
And this is what
And
we're going to do this
reimbursables
way.
have to be in
And-
this sort of format.
Right,
Sure.
and then
Okay.
we can reimburse it.
It's just sound accounting practice to do that, to
Yeah.
do it that way.
And that's why I think I could give Walko events and have him kind of research, what does that look like in an MOU? Like, how do you broadly specify that? But back to the retail recruiter, is that something that,
That's something we researched. That was tried in different municipalities, like Manayunk tried that, and Ardmore's tried that. And, it's hard work. I mean, it doesn't always work like Manayunk, so it stopped working. But these are difficult things. But let's just remember that we did have an economic development committee, and we were trying to really do something there. And so partnership with a person, whether it's Ed or someone else, was important in that work. And it can't be distilled to just events, the work. And when we had the commerce director from the county in, he said, you can't rely on just events, for economic development. So we need a way to compensate a person beyond what the businesses are doing.
but what does that person do, I guess is my question.
Yeah, I mean,
That's reimbursable. Because,
a lot of it is time, so it'd be like meeting with businesses. I have communicates opportunities and coordinates joint efforts for economic development. So that could be like a marketing campaign. It could be a campaign like buy local when we're dealing with the bridge closed. Any of those. So it wouldn't be the Dickens. It's not just the Dickens Festival.
okay, so that makes sense to me, marketing campaigns. So you would come to the borough maybe and say the NBA is going to do, I don't know, this outreach, and
The NBA
there's,
may say during a period of high construction and bridge closure and inaccessibility, we would like to have a coupon campaign or a free
Exactly.
parking campaign or something and need some financial support.
right, we need
Here's
signs, we need a flyer, we need, right.
We frankly need money we need you to provide free parking for a period of time or something like that. I mean, I know those are possible things that could be floated. The question is, who can float them, right? Do we need to hire somebody to do that? Can the NBA being a functioning organization, can we make it clear that they can come to council and float ideas of that nature for consideration? I don't know. Do we already have it, I guess is what I'm saying. We don't have a retail recruiter, but I used to be sort of hot on that idea, and then Bob kind of talked me out of it and was like, do we have a problem with businesses? Do we have a lot of vacancies? Have you noticed a problem? It's like, you got a point there.
Yeah.
I guess I would just say the current structure generates a very limited amount of revenue for this person through the businesses, through the NBA. Whatever they're each paying is pretty small. So they may not be able to foot the bill for the equivalent of a downtown manager.
I guess
if
I'm
we're
not
pulling
thinking
the plug
that.
on that funding, and we're just going to fund through events or reimbursable events. It concerns me that we wouldn't have the loosely structured downtown manager that we do.
I guess I was thinking more as not an MOU for a person, but rather for the organization. So, let's just call it, if Ed Ridgway wins the lottery and moves, you could say, okay, there's not one Ed Ridgway, but Beth does marketing campaigns.
I know what you're saying.
Right,
With the
Tracy
NBA.
takes over events.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
would
no,
be the
that's
NBA.
fine. I'm just talking about the dollars involved to pay for somebody.
And I think that's I don't think we're paying somebody, I think we're supporting the NBA, and then the NBA has to be empowered to figure out how they're paying their members.
Right, so if we have a certain number, so one possible reimbursable could be, you have a coherent plan for a person, for a person who needs to spend 5 hours a week engaged in these kinds of activities, which we think will benefit the downtown, and we're gonna keep track of it this way, and then we're gonna, as the borough, feel financially supported. Right? So we've set aside some money, we could perhaps say that is potentially a reimbursable expense, the third function, right, that you just said. But it would be up to the NBA to articulate that and make it clear what services were provided to be reimbursed by the borough for paying somebody to do that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean,
Rather than the
We
borough hiring somebody to do that.
oh, right, no, no, I'm totally
Yeah.
fine with that. I'm just saying that, you know, we may not have the full list of everything that's involved in the work of a downtown manager, or, you know, and so there may be other reimbursable
I'm not
categories.
thinking of a downtown manager though, I think that's where it disconnect is.
Well, okay, well, I'm saying, whatever you call the role, you
I don't
know.
think it's a role.
I think that it could be,
It's a-
that those functions could be
organization.
potentially reimbursed.
Because the number of hours that go into that kind of work are, I mean, it's really, you know, it's a lot of hours. So, you know, part of what we figured out in economic development is unless there's kind of a baseline compensation, then you're probably not going to find somebody to do this all these hours. So it's just something to think about. If it's all reimbursable, this event, that event.
Well, that's in this by event. What it would be saying maybe one potential thing you could be reimbursed for would be finding somebody who would commit to a baseline level of work doing these things that you think are critical, and just sort of come to council and say, this is what we really think we need in that regard, somebody to function as a downtown manager to do, to have meetings with businesses on this kind of basis to, whatever other functions were identified, that they could come and say, this many hours and this is what we think that we need to pay somebody, and say, well, we're very supportive, can we get reimbursement for that in whole or in part? Or they might go, we need $50,000 to get anybody to even look at this, it's totally out of the budget, it's not a possibility. But I mean, maybe first we decide how much money we can use to support it and make it clear to them what kinds of things they could come to us, right? Like what buckets of expenses could be reimbursed. And I feel like that could be one. And that would be could be an ongoing commitment to somebody to do that work. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, no, that's...
Well, and I think we have to be, it's not just events, right? There's lots of different groups that do events, right? So the NCA could come and say, we want to get paid for Earth Day. I could come and say, I want to get paid for the scavenger hunt, right? But we're saying we will reimburse events that support the downtown economy, right? So it has to be pretty specific. Again, I'm not thinking of person or role. We will support marketing campaigns. You know, do we want to put social media presence? You know, do we want to say to the NBA, you know, it's not, we want our downtown to be visible on social media and the web pages as a destination place, but we're not going to have Michelle, Carol, Sean, and Matt walking around taking pictures of the burgers.
Right.
This is starting to strike me as something that probably needs to be brought to council for discussion at the workshop.
Okay.
But the nature of the kinds of, the nature of the things that could be reimbursed and what the limits are.
That list of categories could be fleshed out.
Events, marketing,
We could work
social
on
media.
that
Okay.
more to flesh that out.
Okay. 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 And, you know, part of the MBA, I think, has to be a clearly articulated, you know, public works, public safety.
But generally, this committee is recommending not renewing the existing terms.
Of an information
Yeah,
officer.
right.
Correct.
Right, okay.
So we are
I mean, that
recommending.
much we have clearly established, right?
So that is being dissolved
Yeah.
once the communication plan is voted upon and agreed upon.
The next step
Sean, is that how you, so we're on the same page then?
About what we might want to include in the next budget cycle is something we should start having some discussions, I think at workshops about, so that we're ready to figure out if we want to budget for event support or other kinds of downtown support, right?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, but to your budget CIP, I also think then,
It's not CIP, it would be operational.
okay, so I'm thinking CIP then, well, no, I guess it wouldn't be CIP, it would be operational. I was gonna say, if we all vote on this communication plan and you as an office come back and say, okay, we meet the goal to update the office to meet goal number 2, we would recommend X, Y, and Z. You said this in the plan, like you put in, I think, furniture, like a conversational space.
Yeah.
That's capital.
That's CIP. We now have $12,000 out of the information officer that then we can suggest and bring to council that we reallocate and define an MOU. I had hoped this summer that we could do this MOU, and I just puttered out. I mean, I think we need MOUs for all of our groups that use property. But clear, but that's a bigger.
But an MOU would be with the MBA for what they can be reimbursed for. I do feel like we probably need to have them, but we can't just decide that here in committee.
No, right, it has to be a larger
And, I
conversation.
think
I wanted to get a starting point for us
That's
to
what I
like.
just.
Okay, all right, so I'll type this up, I will connect with you, and then are we comfortable presenting the communication plan in August's meeting for discussion?
Yes, I am.
You just chatting or? is this-
No, we're meeting, but it's,
I'm sorry, no, I-
join us, it's no, come to the table, Ira, it's all yours.
No, I
Just chatting. Actually, I'm done unless anybody else has anything.
No, thank you for moving. It's a difficult one, so thanks for moving
Okay.
forward.
All right, got it. We're done.
All right.
Thanks.
Wait, do we have to do the minutes and
Oh,
the
shoot,
actual business stuff?
Sean,
The
yeah.
minutes and scheduled
There you
bills?
go. Okay, thank you, Michelle. All right, do you need to put, I mean, you want to run us through the actual business now in 12 minutes? I mean, minutes, schedule bills, easy, environmental council amendment, we're adding two people. Ordinance 1018.
That is the general obligation note, which we'll have a moment to discuss at the public hearing portion of our agenda, starting at 7:30. Doug Rauch from Georgietta Steadley's in the house. Doug, hi. Doug's going to explain. Doug and I need to talk a little bit before we start the meeting,
Okay.
so that we're all on the same page with regards to the terms and
Okay.
of that loan.
And then the resolution, we're going to talk about it as council. I don't think you need to go do that now for Chestnut.
No.
Do you feel the need to talk about 3 over
No,
Chestnut?
not at all.
Nor do I. Okay, any public comment for FNA? No. Okay, all right, adjourned.